Hello, everybody, and welcome into one of the last episodes of Weekly Roundup of Season 10. It's been a wild ride, and Conference Championship Week was no different, just delivering blows at, game after game after game. It just got more wild and more wild. So let's jump into it. So game day was the MAC Championship. Normally we're at an auto bid, but this one was too good to see if Coach Pinstripe could overcome Brett Huntley and the Toledo Rockets, and he did. Now this game did crash at the end of the third quarter when Buffalo was up 14 with the ball originally. So we jumped back in and resimmed it, and the same thing kind of happened. He had a lead in the fourth quarter. We watched it, and he ended up winning anyways. So while the stats might be a little messed up, Buffalo still got the rightful victory, so that was nice to see. Feel free to watch the video. I actually played a play and got a touchdown, so if you want to see that. And then the biggest shock of the week, obviously, was Colorado taking out number 1 Baylor, 32-28. They got a late touchdown here, and then Baylor dropped two I wouldn't say easy catches, contested catches that would have given them a chance to win at the end. As you can see there, 22 points in the fourth quarter to lose it. They were up 28-7, or 28-10. So definitely not the best look for Baylor going into the playoff. And that secured an auto bid for Colorado. Washington, Arizona State. Arizona State was a favorite here, and they got smoked. It was kind of close at halftime, tied, and then it was all Washington in the second half. Very upsetting for Arizona State, who had, playoff hopes, and now they're just going to be playing in a regular bowl game. Michigan State, surprisingly, was one of the only favorites that took care of business. You had McBurnfinger, you had a punt from Bradford Blazer returned, another run for McBurnfinger. Northwestern, the surprise of the season, they couldn't do it one more time, and Michigan State will be your top seed in the playoff. Georgia Southern, they took care of business. It was closer than it should have been, but they had a big lead early and then kind of just dazed into the championship. So, but they won the championship, 10 wins, and they have a chance to get to 11 and a massive budget incoming for them. Houston, this was one that we kind of all had on upset alert, but they took care of business over a sneaky good Memphis team who kept it close up till halftime. Then Houston did what they do best, and they just pulled away, and they are really good at the big play. So, and McCaskill is a player to watch in this playoff. And then the other massive shock of the week, the SEC Championship. Nobody gave Coach Skook and Texas A&M a chance. Here we are, though. Florida mounted a late comeback to try and get this going, but it was all UTAM all day. Middle Tennessee State, they took care of business against Army Flipper Masters, had one hell of a day. Unfortunately, though, they didn't get the help they needed to vault them into the playoff. Nevada shocked New Mexico, winning by a field goal. And then finally, Miami chokes the auto bid, so the ACC will be held out of the college football playoff in Season 10, as FSU started out very bad this year, but Coach Lama, he made adjustments and got himself an ACC title, so props to him. And then let's go over the final top 25 here. Obviously, this is the playoff, so Michigan State will face Florida in the Peach Bowl. Houston will face Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl. That's going to be a massive game as far as Texas is concerned. It's in Texas. You got two very popular teams in the state of Texas, so that is going to be a spectacle to watch. Colorado will face Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl. So Ohio State, obviously back-to-back championship losses, and they will face the highest scoring offense in the country, coming off a win over Baylor. And then finally, Washington got an auto bid. They're at 4, and they will play Baylor in the Sugar Bowl. Two teams that have been in the playoffs before, but have not found that success. So we're definitely hoping for another a Baylor win here. Middle Tennessee State, ECU, and Tennessee got held out mainly from head-to-heads. The Bubble Bowl, but the SFA Citrus Bowl will be between myself and Coach Nick, which will be a very, very fun game to watch regardless of the outcome. And then Georgia's 12, Arizona State 13, like we said, Utah, Northwestern, who will face Georgia in the Outback Bowl, which is the highest CPU teams. Florida State 16, Boston College 17, 18 is Minnesota, 19 Illinois, 20 Miami, 21 Cal, Buffalo up to 22, Ole Miss up to stays at 23. Georgia Southern breaks into the top 25, and then so does BYU, who will face Middle Tennessee State in the New Orleans Bowl. Before we get to any bowl previews or anything like that, let's take a look at the freshman All-Americans here. So, as far as freshman All-Americans go, these matter for the untouchables list. You got Flipper Masters from Middle Tennessee State, SFA player. Also Cam McCarr, who was a redshirt freshman. Braylon Burnside, the #1 recruit, gets there. Ty Schultz, he's not an SFA player, but Buffalo. Michael Orr, he gets it from Tennessee. And then on the offensive line, nobody else but Dwayne Johnson from Michigan State gets the end. And then Kyle Brookins from Georgia Southern, he gets it. Leslie Stirrups from ECU and Calcium Loudermilk. So an all SFA player defensive line. McBurnfinger, he got the middle linebacker. AJ Klein, surprisingly, he got the right outside linebacker spot. Miles Ricketts, that is a surprising one as well. A 4 start from Ole Miss. He had a great year. And then finally, Ja'Cory Williams for Florida State, who is a top 3 player. And then nobody else as far as SFA players are concerned. Moving on, we now have award winners. So the Maxwell goes to Marcus Davis. The Walter Camp goes to Marcus Davis. Nico Reed gets the Bednarik. Not really many SFA players on here this year. Lawrence, he leads the country in sacks. He has 15, so obviously that goes to him. The O'Brien goes back to Marcus Davis. The Walker goes to Cam Porter, probably because McBurnfinger isn't listed as running back first. The Belentikov goes to an SFA player, Alan Hearns. He had a great year, 18 tutties, 1,200 yards. Still a bowl game to play. Heisenberg does finish 5th in this award. Ebron, SFA player, gets the Mackey, easily the top tight end in the country, pretty much no question. Kalepo gets the Outland. Remington goes to Weipler. Lawrence once again gets the Lombardi. Butkiss goes to Tennessee. This is not a SFA player, as Klein just barely missed out, but it does go to a user team. Nico Reed, he gets the Thorpe as well. And then Becker from Colorado, best kicker. Best punter goes to MSU. And then finally, the Jet goes to Washington. So a lot of playoff teams getting these awards. And then also Marcus Davis. Now finally, in terms of players of the week for the conference championships, let's take a look here. So like I said, Flipper Masters had one hell of a game. 400 yards, 4 TDs. He did everything he could. Unfortunately, they did need help. Braxton Miller, 6 touchdowns and a massive upset. Hampfey got it done. Drew Carter had a fantastic comeback against Baylor. Lawrence had a sack and a fumble, and Kopp got 3 TDs. Buffalo, Apollo Ames had a great game in both versions that we played. Sam Heward is having a really bounce back year. We give this team a lot of shit for having a terrible offense on game days, but they somehow find themselves back in the playoff. And then Texas A&M as well. Eli Stowers, he's had a good week here and a good season overall. And then Georgia Southern, Jalen White, 3 touchdowns. And that's going to do it for Players of the Week. Now moving on to, we want to do stat leaders for the end of the regular season. So you got Braxton Miller leading with Marcus Davis at 5. McBurnfinger was in 2nd. Jay Ducker, he is the all-time leader in rushing now. And then Arkansas Sanders stays up there. Receiving leaders, Evans, Boozler are the SFA players. McCormack stays up in the top 5, but Holiday is running away with it. Sack leaders, Lawrence is running away with it, 15.5, and he's in the playoffs, so he could potentially get to 20. Interception leaders, Shutong Mungwa and Deza Fernandez are tied with Little at 8. And then the kicking leaders, Berto, Guayo, Becker, ECU, and MTSU. This one has not really moved all that much. And now, obviously, the one we're all waiting for, the Heisman winner, Binks McBurnfinger, won in an absolute landslide by like 2,000 votes. We'll take a look. Defensively, he had 73 total tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, no interceptions, unfortunately, but he had a few deflections, forced fumbles, and fumble recoveries. But where he shines is at running back. 1,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, 82 broken tackles, and 2 fumbles. And then receiving, though, he also adds 400 yards, 7 touchdowns as well. So in total, he had about 2,100 yards, 23 total touchdowns, plus those defensive stats. So at a 78 overall, there's really nobody else you could have picked here. Marcus Davis is a decent second. If we go through his stats, obviously a massive improvement from his past 41 passing TDs to 8 interceptions. Didn't get to the 4,000 yard marker, but he will in the bowl game. And then rushing wise, he added 500 yards and 8 touchdowns, so 49 and 8. But the SFA Player of the Year does go to McBurnfinger. Marcus Davis, hopefully he does come back for another year because he could definitely build on this. I feel like if Boston College would have finished the year a bit better, they start out 9-0 and finish 10-2, this might have been a different story. But alas, Boston College and the ACC in general was super weak this year. So despite him sweeping all these awards, McBurnfinger still topped him. Mark Liu ended up getting 3rd place here, 39-6. And then he had 800 yards, but only 6 rushing touchdowns. But the sophomore, his first chance at starting. Unfortunately, he couldn't get Miami to the playoff, same spot they got last year, but a very nice year as well for him. And then Cam Porter definitely got outplayed by McBurnfinger in that game. He had 23 rushing touchdowns with only 600 yards, but where he lacked was in the receiving game, and that's why he lost the Heisman. Had he put up some decent receiving numbers, he probably potentially could have beaten McBurnfinger. And then Stowers does jump up here at the end in the final week. We haven't seen him since the beginning of the season. He is pretty low in the touchdowns, same interceptions as Marcus Davis, but rushing wise he had 12 touchdowns, so that puts him at 43 and 8. And we're going to see him in the playoff against Houston. So that's going to be a fun one. Probably my favorite matchup of the first round definitely will be that Houston game. As far as anything else, I mean, we might as well take a look at, I'm trying to think if we want to show anything else. There were no injuries for any of the CP or any of the conference championship games. I checked all the teams that played. Nobody had an additional injury. So yeah. And now let's check in on the bowl games here. These are officially the bowl games. So you have the New Mexico Bowl will be Clemson and Alabama, 2 of the last 4 teams in. We no longer are doing a shit bowl, so they probably save their bids. FIU and Nevada, that's going to be a fun one. The Hot Takes Barstool Arizona Bowl, SMU and Fresno State, and then the Peyton Security Hermanos Gasparilla Bowl, Northern Illinois and USC. This one's going to be fun, the Barkley Las Vegas Bowl, Ole Miss versus Arizona State. That will be a very fun one. Like I said, the New Orleans Bowl, BYU, Middle Tennessee State. The SFA Hall of Fame Hawaii Bowl, Louisiana and Western Michigan. Pinheads Bowl is going to be Air Force and Kansas. Kansas is a heavy favorite, but Air Force could shock some people there. Military Bowl, the Hobbs Mayo Bowl is Arkansas versus Arkansas State. That will be a fun one. Chad Barber faces New Mexico. The Yamanit Cheez-It Bowl, Rutgers and Minnesota. This is going to be one of the funner ones. SFAF Independence Bowl, Buffalo and Coach Coco over at JSOW. They got Texas Bowl. This one's kind of a toss-up. Don't sleep on Toledo in this matchup. This is the Spark Armed Forces Bowl, so this is going to be, I think, closer than the experts think. The TCS Network LA Bowl is going to be Penn State, who, oddly enough, I picked to win the national championship this year, and they're 6-6, versus Florida State, who beat me last year, so they are in my debut bowl game, kind of dunking on me with this matchup, but that's all right. Hopefully we can have a close game. The Alamo Bowl, Iowa State facing Army. Kiko Strong is questionable, so we don't know if he's going to play. I did change the backup for him to who he wanted. Notre Dame and Florida Atlantic. Arizona and San Diego State in the Sicko Sun Bowl. That's going to be a fun one. The Music City Bowl, this is one of the bigger matchups. Music City, Miami and Cal. Then you got the Liberty Bowl, Iowa and Stanford. And then obviously this is the playoff matchup. The First Responder Bowl, we're going to see Marcus Davis try to take on Doug Chonkla, Mike Allstott in this Illinois team. Two teams that had really high hopes towards the end of the year that were kind of squashed in rivalry games. This is the Outback Bowl. You got Northwestern and Georgia. That one's going to be a ton of fun. And then the Citrus Bowl. I'm very nervous about this one. It's really just a toss-up. Could go either way. I think it's going to just come down to how Bo Wallace plays. This is just placeholder teams for the second round of the playoff. And then Latina Juice Gator Bowl, you've got B-Dog versus Rice. The Fiesta Bowl, the 3-6 matchup, the 4-5 matchup we already went over. And then my matchup I'm very excited for, just because we haven't seen Houston on game day this year, but every time they're on BearCave, they just score a shit ton. And then Texas A&M, we've seen them technically twice. One game they were amazing, the next game they were terrible, so we don't know what kind of team we're going to see there. I'm hoping a good one. Once again, another placeholder team, the Birmingham Bowl, and then finally the last two bids to get in, Eastern Michigan and Michigan in the Lending Tree Bowl, and then finally two more placeholder teams that lose their bids for the national championship there. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap up the conference championship weekly roundup. I want to thank you guys for watching, tuning in for this whole season. Saturday will be the bowl season streams, and then playoff should kick off on Sunday and finish either Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So definitely look forward to that. So thank you guys for watching.